All right, so you're looking to increase margins in some of your MSP services. Well, we're going to dig into options around BCDR today that will increase margin, increase the impact to the small business community, and offer opportunities to your internal team. So we've had some really good conversations with some MSPs over the last few months around their BCDR solution. And the continual feedback that we get is that small businesses just won't pay for a true BCDR solution. And we're going to push back on that and say, well, that might be true with the level of education and communication that you're providing to the community. Because if businesses knew what risk they really held with an imperfect or incomplete BCDR solution, they would pay the difference. They don't want to put their companies at risk. They don't want to fall back to insurance, and they want to make sure they keep their reputation and revenue strong. And before we move forward with any sort of improvement or services, we really have to have that education piece out in front. We have to talk about why we're changing the services, why we're changing the pricing, and why we're adding features to those services. With data exploding in all directions, meaning the data is growing itself and then we're putting it in multiple locations, it's hard to get our arms around everything. And it takes an IT professional to really take the time to understand the SaaS applications, the local applications, and the mobility of data to make sure that we're following proper protection mechanisms in all cases. And when we look at the work required to do that properly, it just takes time. It takes time to do the initial discovery, and it takes time to do the ongoing maintenance and discovery. And we have to build that cost into the service. So let's bring a little more clarity to that margin conversation. Now, BCDR is typically sold in one of two fashions: as a markup product where there's no labor, or as a service where we look at it from margin and there is labor included, which is what we're going to highly recommend if we want it to be impactful and to be able to scale in your environment. If you sell BCDR as a marked up product, you're typically either billing separately for those hours, you're eating those hours, or you're including them in another managed service agreement. But at the end of the day, you're still doing the work, assuming you have a comprehensive solution. So if we're looking to increase margin in our BCDR service, we typically have one of three avenues that we can take. We can do a combination of them. But first we have reducing cost. And this would be lowering our software and licensing fees and or decreasing the amount of labor or the cost of that labor to deliver the service. Second is we increase price. If we keep the cost consistent and we increase what we charge for it, obviously we increase the margin. And last is we increase capacity. And while this won't specifically increase the margin on a specific contract or agreement, it will increase our service department gross profit significantly if we can do more services with the same amount of staff. Now, if we look at these individually to see what are the pros and cons of each area, cost cutting is always a good step to take if you're inefficient. But there's typically only so much room or so much money or margin we can squeeze out of our software and licensing. And if we decrease the labor or decrease the cost of that labor, meaning we're going to put a less expensive employee on the task, we're typically lowering the impact to the small businesses that we're providing the services to. Now, if we look at it from a pricing strategy, getting to 65% margin on our agreements is really critical for the overall health of the company. So if we're not to 65% margin already, that's the first step. Get to profitability. From there, we can always increase prices if our clients will accept it. But a lot of times, once we've tapped out that pricing increase, it's time to look at that third category, which is increasing capacity, which is the third area to improve margin. If we can push more through the funnel effectively, we'll be in really good shape. And overall, our whole company will become healthier because we're able to do more work for more clients. And this can be achieved in a few different ways. First is just a single pane of glass, using one tool and one monitoring system to maintain and manage all of our backup accounts. This allows us to be very efficient, not have to switch back and forth, and really get to know a single product so we're more effective at troubleshooting and supporting the environment. We can also assign dedicated staff to our BCDR solution, meaning it doesn't rotate around from person to person. We have an individual who's in charge of it, so they don't have to jump back and forth. They can stay focused and push more work through quickly. And last, we can consider what we need to do versus what needs to be done and look into a co-managed BCDR solution that allows us to scale and offload a significant portion of that labor to an outside provider. Now, that last statement might rub a few MSP leaders the wrong way. And it's always interesting to me when we talk about co-managed or outsourcing some services to another company, because that's actually what we are in the MSP world. We are looking to outsource IT services from the small business community to our company. So if we look at that strategy for ourselves on what we need to do versus what needs to be done, we can identify those tasks that are required to be done by our team and put all other tasks as a potential outsourced scope of work. Now, to get into a little math, most BCDR solutions that are co-managed will reduce the workload by around 90%, meaning that if you have a dedicated technician that does management of backups, we can get 90% of their day back to redeploy to other services and tasks that are revenue generating. Now, I know what you're going to say. I'm Jim Peterson from ConnectWise. Of course, I'm talking about our co-managed BCDR solution, and I really do think it is a great fit. If we looked back prior to 2020, it was really hard to financially justify a co-managed solution because we were hiring employees for $30,000 or $40,000 a year, training them up, and having them take over a lot of the tasks. That has shifted significantly, specifically since 2022. We've really had a challenge in finding great talent that is anywhere near affordable. So looking at this now makes more sense than ever because we can look to use those great resources that are hard to find and expensive and putting towards those revenue generating tasks and create new services that bring more impact to the small business world and revenue to your company. And by looking at a co-managed backup solution, the total cost when you consider licensing and labor will typically be significantly less, giving you more margin by default in your current BCDR agreements with the pricing you already have. And if you look to take the time that the technician would have been spending on backup management and put it towards data management, data discovery, data classification that are billable new services, you can significantly increase the overall revenue quickly. So if you're looking to increase those margins on your BCDR solution, we can definitely control costs, which would be the software and licensing side and the labor cost or labor hours. We can increase pricing, and both of those are effective to a point. From there, we have to understand how we can scale the service and be more efficient over time. And we would look at things like a single pane of glass, a single application, dedicated employees, and then definitely co-managed services. What can we outsource? What can we co-manage in an environment and still make the impact or increase the impact to our small business community? I'm Jim Peterson, Principal Solution Advisor at ConnectWise, and if you're looking to improve any part of your MSP, whether it's services, solutions, sales, we got your back, so hit us up. Until next time, thank you.
Let's go!